Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in Lincoln County, Kentucky. This was about 7 years ago from today's date. I was living pretty close to some railroad tracks, not far from railroad tracks at all, actually. And the road that I was on, that I lived on, was just a very, very small road that led back into a holler, and it had many hills and many woods around. And as a matter of fact, it's odd because I was renting the place from my uncle, and my mom had grew up on this land whenever we were kids, and we would have family reunions, and we would have them at this location when we were kids. And when we would play, my sister and I and all my cousins, we always thought it felt strange, like we were being watched. We always had that feeling. It was an eerie feeling when we played out in the woods back then. All my cousins will attest to that. It was just an eerie feeling, and just a different vibe. And we didn't really understand why, but now it makes perfect sense. As I grew up, I rented a place from my uncle, and I was out there one night. Me and my girlfriend were in the house, in the bedroom, and we'd been asleep, I would say, for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. And all of a sudden, I had a German Shepherd, and she had a small dog. And we had them outside, chained to the porch. They were on leashes where they couldn't go anywhere, but they were on the porch. And they woke us up in the middle of the night from barking, just the god-awfulest bark you ever heard. My German Shepherd, he would bark and things, but never anything of this nature. I mean, my girlfriend woke me up crying, and because she said there was something outside, and I was like, I didn't feel like getting up. I just thought it was something. We lived in a holler. I just figured it was something ignorant and nothing worth getting out of bed for. But the dogs did concern me because they were going so crazy. I'd never heard them act like that before. So when I tell this story, I get the heebie-jeebies a little bit. My heart gets racing. Just every time I tell it, I start getting that feeling again, like when I saw him, the Bigfoot. So it gives me this strange feeling, even just talking about it. So I got up after my girlfriend come in there and told me I had to come outside because there was something out there. I finally got up out of the bed, and at this point, when she was crying, I was really concerned. So I got up and I pretty much ran outside, and my dog at this time was still going crazy. This was a big German Shepherd. He weighed at least 110 pounds, and the hair on the back of his neck when I got outside was standing up, and he was about to break what he was chained to. I mean, he was pulling on that thing. So as my dog is pulling against the porch that I have him chained to, I just happened to look up to see what it is that he's barking at, because I was focused on him more than anything, just because he was acting so out of character. I was like, what's going on with my dog? And how crazy he was acting. So I just happened to look at him and look at what he was looking at. And when I looked up and there's a building like that people put their lawnmowers in, these big buildings, and it has a light at the very top of the pitch on the roof of the building. And when I looked up, there was the biggest Bigfoot. I mean, it had to be at least 9 feet tall. And he was standing there, and he was taller than the light was on the building. It was the light was shining on him. So I got a good look at this guy. And when I looked at him, he looked back at me, and we locked eyes, and he stared at me and gave me, like he was telepathically telling me, like, you should not be looking at me right now. You've messed up, is pretty much how I felt. Like, you've really messed up now. But as he was looking at me, I just got this overwhelming feeling that you're seeing something that you're not supposed to be seeing right now. So I just started crying whenever I saw this thing. And he probably stood there for a good 45 seconds, just standing there. And he was being super still, but his head was pointed down and his eyes were looking up at me. And he didn't have much of a neck at all. It was just like traps on your shoulders, super, super wide. He was wider than the door to this building, and just staring at me relentlessly. He would not break eye contact with me. He kept his eyes locked on me and his eyes locked on mine. And as I'm doing this, my dog's still going crazy. But my girlfriend at the time, she saw it, and she ran inside the house and locked our bedroom door, and she wouldn't come back out. I stood there in amazement because I believed in Bigfoot, but I never thought in a million years that I would see him right across the street from my house. And this street I could jump over this street. It was a single roll for cars. Like if you met another vehicle on this road, you would have to get over in the grass to let the car go by. It wasn't a 2-lane road. It was a single lane road. So I could easily just take a leap and jump over the road. But I would say that this encounter, he was probably 30 yards from me, just right across the street, just staring at me. And as I stared at him, after about 45 seconds to a minute went by, which seemed like a lifetime to me, and here I am crying like a baby, pretty much, because like I said, I was having these feelings like, you're not supposed to be seeing me right now. You should have never come out here. Turn around and go back inside. I mean, that's feels like he was telepathically telling me this in my brain. But after I didn't, because I was in just such shock, I really couldn't move. And my dog's continuing to go crazy. He begins to walk out of the light And as he walks out of the light, he walks into the high grass. There's cattails and tall grass all around this building. He walks out of the light and he begins to squat down. And he squatted down, and as he did, he squatted all the way down. But the whole time he walked from the building to the grass and the tall cattails, he never broke eye contact with me the whole time. And when he squatted down, his knees come up above his shoulders. This is how tall he was. His knees were way up above his shoulders, and he squatted down in the grass. And as he squatted down, he had his head down and he looked up at me in the grass. I guess he was trying to hide from me in the grass, but I could still see him, and I could notice him shifting back and forth, backing up just every so slightly, but he never broke eye contact with me throughout this whole encounter. And he kept looking at me and you could see his glowing eyes. At this point, whenever he got out of the light into the grass, his eyes began to glow a little bit, and they were huge, huge eyes. I'm talking just gigantic, paralyzing eyes. You can imagine something this large that won't take its eyes off of you, like he's looking into your soul. I mean, so I just kept looking at him until he kept shimmying backwards ever so slightly and shimmying backwards ever so slightly as he squatted down looking at me, until eventually he backed up to where I couldn't see him anymore. And he was out of my sight. And that was pretty much the end of the encounter. My dog never stopped barking. I'm sure my dog probably could still see him, smell him, whatever. But he barked until daylight came. He never stopped barking that night. And I didn't sleep the rest of that night, me or my girlfriend. And needless to say, she never came back over to my house. I had to go to her house if we spent time together, because she wouldn't come to my house. And it was terrifying there for a while, even going to my house when it got dark. You could just feel a vibe there, like it brought back all the vibes I had as a kid when we went there and played in the woods that we had. And there's supposedly an old Indian burial ground there and everything. So it was an experience that I'll never forget. And when I was looking at him, and he was in the light, so I was able to see him very well. His hair was dark, really dark, but it was splotchy. It was spotty and patchy, like mangy, kind of like, and the hair was really long, but in patches. There was bald spots on him. I remember that very, very vaguely, very, very clearly. I'll never forget how patchy that his hair was and how he had bald places on his body. I'll never forget the stare down, like he was looking into my soul, and every bit, like I said, he was every bit of 9 feet tall, because I went and measured that light the next day and looked where he was at in the grass that he walked in and the cattails, and he had mashed down grass, and I could see where he squatted down, and I could see all that stuff the next day. He left prints He he left indentions in the grass where he squatted down and where he shimmied backwards out of sight where I couldn't see him anymore. He left a lot of evidence of him being there. So I knew I'd seen what I seen, but the next day, being able to go over there in the daylight and check things out, I was like, maybe I'm not just absolutely 100% crazy. I know I saw what I saw, but going over there and seeing the prints and the prints in the grass and everything, it was satisfying to me. So I didn't just feel like I was absolutely crazy. But I told my uncle, who I was renting from, about it, and he just kind of laughed about it and said, well, you're not the first one that's told me that about this land and on this property about Bigfoots. It's always been a squatchy place. It's always been a very intriguing place. It's with knobs all around. The coolest looking knobs you ever see, very pointy. But this road, one lane road, went over railroad tracks, and then it was just one lane, and it dead ended up into a knob with houses. There's probably 4 houses on this road, and I was the second house on the right. And there was about 2 or 3 houses past me before it dead ends into just a knob, or a big hill, whatever you want to call it. We call it knobs around here, Kentucky knobs. And from that time on, I actually seen another one later on down the road, behind my house, behind a big hay bale in the same property. And this one was a lighter colored one. But he was squatted down behind a hay bale. And it was pure daylight. And when I saw this one, it didn't look the same. This one was hairier. It was a more reddish color, hair tint, and it blended in with like a hay bale really well. It wasn't near as terrifying, of an experience. It was, like I said, in broad daylight. It was probably 7 o'clock in the evening, on a summer night in Kentucky. And that was in my backyard. The one that was more terrifying was in front of me in my front yard, across the street of my front yard. But, so they're all around that property, and they're all around that area, in Lincoln County. But that was an experience that, I'll absolutely never forget. And, I've always wanted to go back there and go squatching, what we call squatching. I did a lot of research after this experience about Bigfoots, which I already was intrigued by them, and watched YouTube videos and things of that nature, and podcasts and everything like that, and listened to podcasts and about Bigfoots before I had my experience. And afterwards, now that I go back in the woods, now I look for things and structures and broken tree limbs, and talk to my friends about, I would like to go squatching at night. Talking about it and doing it's two different things. If I got out there and did tree knocks and had some answer me back or whatnot in the middle of the night, I would probably freak out a little bit. Like right now, I'm freaked out a little bit just telling the story. It really gets my heart rate going, and brings back those feelings of whenever I was looking at this Bigfoot. I've definitely been intrigued in the Bigfoot world, and I've got some Bigfoot casts of their feet and stuff made some. But that was an encounter I'll never forget. And I actually look forward to, going out and maybe actually doing some squatching, with friends and actually, seeing if we can't get some, wood knocks and get some answers and stuff like that, them answering me back, things of that nature. But I want to be, with, several of my good friends, several of us, and, not get too crazy with it, because I know what they're capable of doing. I don't think they are out to harm us, but, I know it would be terrifying. So I would definitely want some, several people with me if I did it. But like I say, saying it and doing it's two different things, 'cause it could be terrifying. If I actually seen one out in the woods, not around the structure of my own home that I could go back into, it would be very terrifying to see what I saw that night. But that is my Bigfoot experience. That is the encounter that I had. And, it was an experience I'll never forget. And, I tell people about it. And, when I tell people about it, most people I talk to about it believes every word I say about it. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to make something like that up. So I don't go around talking about it to everyone. When it first happened, I did. But as the years have went on, I've kind of got more quiet about it and not talk so much about it. Just because, every time I talk about it, it brings back those feelings again and, the anxiety and stuff of it again. So, that is my Bigfoot experience. And, I was thankful that I was able to share it.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in Allegan County, Michigan. I was out, just like any random day, going down to my, hunting spot. And, it was back then a little more wooded area, well, with quite a bit wooded area with, a creek and, a cornfield and some, alfalfa fields that were kind of out in the middle of nowhere there. There were no roads close by where I had hunted at that time, but went to go down to my stand and climbed up in the stand and noticed there was no birds or just no animals around. And that's usually unusual for where I was at. Usually you hear a lot of wildlife and, you'll see deer and stuff, and there was none of that. Well, I'd been sitting there and just kind of had this eerie feeling something wasn't right. And for about, a good hour, there's just nothing. So I happened to just take my binoculars out and look out in the corner of the field, and I saw a very nice buck standing there, but he was, he just acted very skittish. Normally they would be on the south side of the field grazing and stuff, and you could watch them pretty much all afternoon long, and they would come to where I was at by my stand. Sometimes you get an encounter of a deer, and try and get a shot at them. But this buck, for whatever reason, was very, very skittish. So I decided to climb down out of my stand. And in doing so, I got into the cornfield. And when I got into the corn rows, it kind of a strange, odd smell. It was real skunkish, but it just felt like the whole time something was watching me, and the hair on my neck actually at one point stood up. But I had to be really quiet while I was trying to stalk this buck. I got within 50 to 60 yards of it, and then there was a ditch in between us. So I kind of got into the grass to hunkered down in there and was watching the buck. And for some reason, he froze. His eyes were glued onto the south. He was not paying attention to me whatsoever. So I just had that feeling again. Something was, really been watching us. And I looked, and then that's when I seen the Bigfoot. At the time, I was in just complete shock. He was, I don't know, maybe 8 to 9 feet tall. The corn that year was really, really tall. It was over 10 feet because it was a really good year, but I got a really good look at him. Just the way the body moved, the long arms, and he was muscular. I mean, but he was, I think he knew I was there, and he kind of was looking at the way the deer, but it's hard to explain. He was walking away from us. He did that for about, 20 yards and kind of faced towards the deer and myself again. And then, there was a noise and it spooked the deer away. And then I watched the deer move and take off into the corn. And then I looked back and the creature was gone. After the deer bolted off, I decided this is not a good situation to be in, and went towards the way the deer was across the creek. And then my neighbor's house was about, quarter mile away. So I walked over to them and I just was in complete shock. I mean, it was getting towards evening by that point, and I had to get back to my house. So I had to walk, through the cornfields again to get back to my house. I just, never truly felt right. We had some other instances too with stuff near my house. We would hear weird noises that whole summer at night, on and off. That whole year was weird. They were finding deer with their head and neck had been ripped out and off, and the insides were completely gone. There was no guts in them whatsoever. I had heard from other neighbors. I had never personally seen one of the deer, but had been told. But yeah, that was my Bigfoot sighting. It wasn't nothing too scary where I felt like I was going to get killed or anything by it. But yeah, that's it. I also had a encounter with what they call a type 3. The type 3 was, I was out turkey hunting, and that was mid-afternoon. We had a big storm the week before come through. And it was what they call straight line winds, and it had knocked down in the woods in the state forest there where I had hunted, had knocked down a bunch of the huge trees, and I was hunting in kind of a blowdown area there. I was only 100 yards off the road from my vehicle and heard a turkey gobble. So I went down the trail, and there's some mounds back, Native American mounds back in there, and kind of a swampy area, and the turkeys like to inhabit that area. So I was hoping to get one. While I come into an opening, I could hear the bird gobbling, but he was on the other side of the fallen tree, and I had just loaded my shotgun, and it was a pump shotgun, and I clicked it. And that's when the type 3 popped up just it was laying in like the fallen tree where the deadfall was. I don't know if he was sunning himself or what he was doing, but it popped up. It looked at me, and it could see very much that I had a gun, and just looked and jumped and was gone. That's as fast as that was. I mean, he was as he was really dark black, and I can remember the eyes being like a greenish color. Very man, the legs were, man, like human. The body, he looked like a bodybuilder. That was big, but I don't know. I never felt any negative energy from him or anything, like I was in harm's way. I don't know if we bumped each other and I spooked him and he spooked me, but yeah, I definitely turned away and have not really hunted that spot ever again. And that's the Dogman encounter.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. It's pick a man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking A bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, looking at the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, looking at the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Backwards in double time, looking at the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound, I don't